Hey everybody, so this is going to be a video walkthrough of Lab 11, the third GIS exercise about water quality. To start off with, you're going to download the GIS files from Blackboard right here, and then open up ArcMap and add data, and select all the files, all the 6 shape files in your water quality exercise folder that you downloaded. Click Add, and that should bring everything into ArcMap. So in this exercise, we're given the hypothetical situation of a watershed with some land for sale and a stream flowing through it, and our job is to determine which homes we would potentially like to buy based on some of the criteria. The exercise is listed out here in the instruction manual. The first criteria that we're going to set up is we want to find a home that's within 450 feet of the river. So if we go back to this, we can click off some of these layers and it starts to reveal what we're given here. So right now just the river layer is selected. I will increase the width on that. And land use has a bunch of different polygons. We can turn that off for now. We're just focused on river and the homes for sale. So the homes for sale, these little green dots. The question and the exercise is asking which of these homes are within 450 feet of the river. So it's obvious we can see a few of them are tucked up right against the river here. But we're going to go through some steps to actually identify that and select these homes out of this larger group. The first step in doing that is creating a buffer layer around the river. So you'll open up Buffer. This is in the Geoprocessing tab. Your input feature is going to be the line or polygon features to be buffered. So we actually are going to buffer the river. And the output feature class is just what they save it as. It's going to be saved as river buffer. And then we're going to assign a distance away from the river. And in feet, we are looking for 450 feet. So we'll click OK. And what this is doing is creating a new layer that gives us a 450-foot buffer all the way around the river. And you can see there it just popped in. So the second step in this is to select only the homes for sale that fall within this river buffer region. And that's going to be done using another process called clip. So here we're going to be asked to input the features to be clipped. So we're going to be clipping the homes for sale using the clip feature, or the features used to clip the input features. That's going to be our river buffer that we created. And again, it'll assign an output folder for you and a name for it, and that should be pretty default. So we're going to keep with that. We'll click OK. And what it's given us now is the homes for sale clip. So if we turn off homes for sale, let's turn off everything. So now we've got the river and the river buffer. And we click on homes for sale clip, and it's only the homes that are within the river buffer region. So this is the final step in part 3. I think right now we'll go ahead and change the symbol for that so that they're a little bit more apparent. We'll make them big old pink triangles. Okay, and now we can see we have all of the homes. We have the river buffer and the river, and then isolated here are only the homes that are within the river buffer region. And so one of the questions is asking for how many homes for sale are located within 450 feet of the river. I mean, we could just count up the triangles, but in any other map, in some other maps, there might be thousands of these. So the way to do that is to right-click on this new layer you created, the clipped homes for sale, and we're brought to the attributes table, which lists 13 homes out of the original 26. The next part of this exercise is asking us to evaluate land use and pick homes based on certain categories that the lands are zoned for. So it's asking specifically for houses that fall on lands that are zoned for forest or cropland or residential. If we go into ArcMap here, we have this layer, land use, that we can click on. If we open the attributes table on this, we can see that there's all these different polygons, and each one has a code name. So there's mines and gravel, forest, croplands, lakes. You don't want to build a house on a lake or in the middle of a lake. You want to be within the vicinity of it. Orchard, mixed commercial industrial, and then it also has an LU code next to it. So instead of having to write out cropland and pasture, you can just write 0. So the first thing we'll do is change the color of this so we can see it a little bit more clearly. So we open the Properties tab of Land Use. Since we're going to be going off of categories rather than quantities, we're trying to break this up by each land use category. So I'll click Unique Values, make sure that the value field is in code name. I like a simpler color ramp, something maybe not as Technicolor. Let's try this one. So now we've got all of these different colors. Let's change the color ramp, make it something pretty. How about this? Yeah, that looks good. Let's try that. So we added all the values, and now we can see we have our selected homes within the river, and we are looking for only the cropland, the forest, and the residential. What we'll do is select from this land use layer just those 3 land use types, and we'll create a layer out of those, and then we'll do the same thing that we did for the river buffer, and we'll clip out just the homes for sale along the river that fall into one of those 3 categories. So to start with, we're going to start with selection here. The selection tab, select by attributes, and we are going to be not doing that layer. We're going to go down to the land use layer. And so this is where we're going to be typing in sort of a query statement. It's very case sensitive, but I have some examples in the Word document. We will pick by code name in this case. And what I've determined is that what we're saying here is that from land use, the layer land use, where the code name from the attributes table is equal to residential, forest, or cropland and pasture. Just those 3 specific names. So click OK, and now we've got this bright blue highlight all the way around every one of those polygons, which is the majority of the map, but again, if we were just to select 1 or 2, it would be much less. So what we can do from this, now that we've got this selected, we can create a new layer by right-clicking on the layer that this selection is within, which is the land use layer, and we click up to selection, and this is what you can do all kinds of things with the selected polygons you have, but one of them is create layer from selected features. So we'll add that, and now we've got up at the top here just those layers that we created. Just the layer that includes cropland, forest, or residential. And we can change the categories on that if we'd like to make it more simple. So categories, unique features. Let's add the values to that. So now we have just those 3. See, the green, the pink, and the bluish color relate to the green, the pink, and the blue in the original land use folder or layer. Okay, so now we've got that. Let's move this down so we can see the homes for sale above it, and let's actually put the river above that as well too. So now we've got all the land use types, the homes that we picked out that were near the river, and then also the homes that we picked out overlaid with the land use. So the next step in part 4 here is to select the homes from part 2 that fall within this layer of preferred land use. So we can do that one of either 2 ways. We could go back and use the clipping tool again and figure out which of the homes fall within the land use layer, or we can select by location, which we'll try this time. So from here, we're going to be selecting from the homes for sale clip layer, which is the ones that are next to the river, and the source layer is going to be the land use selection, and it's basically highlighting only the homes that intersect the source layer feature. So our source layer is land use, our selection layer is homes for sale clip. So if we overlay this, click OK, these blue dots now are the selected homes that fit within this land use layer. There's only 2 of them that didn't make the cut because they're on a different type of land. They're on, these ones are on mixed commercial and residential. So we will exclude those, and the same thing goes here. We're going to create a new layer from just these clipped homes, and to do that you'll go up to Homes for Sale Clip. That we have our selection on this layer, so come down to Selection and Create Layer from Selected Features. And so we can turn this off, and now we've got these black dots here. Let's change that to another color. Let's do like blue, how about bright green squares? That's too hard to see. Let's go with, let's make them pink again. Bright pink squares. Maybe make them a little smaller. Okay. So now we've got just these guys. We've now overlaid the river buffer and the land use selection over our Homes for Sale clip, and we will once again look at the attributes table. And our question for part 4 is just asking for how many do we have now. So in this section there are only 11 homes actually total. 11 homes that fit these two criteria from parts 3 and 4. In part 5 we're going to be looking at some water quality parameters for this drainage. We specifically will go through the dissolved oxygen levels at the different sampling points that we have along the river. Our goal is to identify just the houses that are within, say, half a mile of the sampling points that had a DO reading of greater than 8 milligrams per liter. So this layer here in the table of contents called sample points, that includes all of the water samples that were taken from this river. So right now they're represented by these little black circles, and there's a dozen or so of them throughout the river. There's a lot of data associated with this layer. So there's different parameters: conductivity, dissolved oxygen, temperature, stream flow. Right now we're just going to focus on dissolved oxygen. So we're going to plot dissolved oxygen using symbols for their different intensities, their different values. In this case, opening up the layer properties and symbology, this is now going to be a quantities display. So we're going to display in the value field dissolved oxygen, dis-oxy, and they give us a range. This GIS is pretty good about selecting a range for you, so it's essentially set up 5 different classifications. We'll try this for now. We're going to also highlight all these and make the symbols a little bit bigger. I go to Properties for Selected Symbols. Let's bring up the circle to make it a size 10 circle. So now they'll be easier to see. So the blue circle is going to be the lowest DO, the red circle will be the highest DO. So it's a little hard to see because we have this land use layer, so I'll remove that. And now we're just left with the stream, the different tributaries. The pink squares are the homes for sale that we've already selected from steps 3 and 4. And now we've overlain the dissolved oxygen at each of these different sample points. And I think the first question that we're talking about here, we want to just get a general idea of where these higher dissolved oxygen samples are located in the watershed. And to me it looks like generally in the upstream direction at the higher elevations. There's something called stream rank. So there's the first order stream is the one that is first making its way in. Every time it makes a Y, it becomes a second order, and then it makes a Y that becomes a third order, makes a Y a fourth order. So you could say something like the higher dissolved oxygen contents are in the first order streams or the lower order streams. And that makes sense because they're more likely to be faster moving and cleaner, a lot more spring fed. They haven't had as much time to break down with bacteria and contaminants. So higher dissolved oxygen at a higher elevation in the flow path or in the first order streams would cover that. The next step in this part is to select only the sample points with a DO level of greater than 8 milligrams per liter. And to do that, Again, we'll use the selection tool, and we will select by attributes on this one. The layer that we're using is going to be sample points, and then it gives us all of our columns here, so select dissolved oxygen, and we are going to be writing another query statement here. Don't you love that word? Dissolved oxygen is greater, since it's in numerical values, greater than the number 8. And this will select, puts that kind of bright neon blue over any of the points that have greater than 8, which makes sense. The yellow ones are left out because those ones stop at about 8.3. So we're just selecting essentially the orange and the red layers, orange and the red points. And again, we'll right-click, selection, create layer from selected features. And so now we can turn off sample points, and now we've got the sample point selection, which is just the higher DO points, and we'll pick an interesting symbol for that. Let's do, bright green circles. So okay, here's our points with high DO, and we still have our homes for sale overlaid, and the next step is we're going to set up a buffer around each of these sample points within half a mile, and we're going to pick the houses that are within half a mile of these sample points, because if you're going to get a house on a river, you want to make sure that it has high DO, because then it's got really good fishing and really good swimming, and you know, what's the point of having a river house if the fishing and the swimming's no good? So as in earlier steps, we are going to use the buffer tool for this. Our input feature, the point, line, or polygon features to be buffered, is going to be the sample point selection. And then the output feature class is kind of written for us. We want miles, and we want half a mile, which is 0.5 miles. Click OK on that, and it's buffering, it's computing it. And here we go. It gave us sample point buffers, this new layer. So we can turn off our sample points location. So now we're left with this. These are the blue, shaded circles represent half a mile radius from the DO sample points that had higher than 8. And again, the pink squares are the homes for sale. So we're just going to select these 4, which we could do by identifying each one and looking at, okay, that's the one at 512 Willowbrook. But there's a better way to do this. Again, we'll use the selection tool to select by location. We are going to click the target layer is the homes for sale clip 5 selection, essentially what the last one we did when we got the pink squares. And the source layer is going to be this new buffer layer that we made, the sample points buffer, which includes the half mile radius around that. So we set up this sort of selection attribute thing, and we'll click OK. And again, we have the selected homes here that fall within the blue circles. These two would be a good match. Honestly, I'd probably get a home up here too, but these ones actually fall within our criteria. So we can go to this. If we want to make one more layer, might as well. We right-click on the homes for sale selection here, and we will create a layer from selected features. That comes all the way up to the top. And now we've got these guys. So these 5, I believe 4, these 4 homes are the ones that fit all of our criteria. So our last questions here are how many homes did fit all the criteria for this exercise. And we can go back and list the criteria for the homes we're interested in as stated in parts 3 through 5. So if we go back, the first thing we did was let's unclick everything and we'll walk through it. So we had a river flowing through here. We had all these homes for sale, represented by the green dots. We put up a buffer around the river, 450-foot buffer around the river, and then we selected just the homes that fit inside that buffer. And then we looked at the land use, and we identified only the land use that was cropland, pasture, forest, or residential. And then we selected just the homes that fit within those 3 land use categories. And that became this. So now we had this group of homes that fit the 2 criteria. And then we brought in the dissolved oxygen sample points. And we listed all of the dissolved oxygen based on colors, from the red being the highest dissolved oxygen and the blue being the lowest. And then we set up a buffer around those of 1/2 mile of any of those that were above 8 parts per million. And then we selected just the homes that were inside of that buffer region. And that's what we're left with. So after all of that work, there are these 4 homes that we could potentially spend a lot of money on. So that wraps up this exercise. I hope you guys had a great time. And we have one more coming up on Monday. I'll talk to you soon.